But das a greiser hefrish, zimen darf haben, dafka hechen keich, an ander keich. Goes now, this is a big difference, whether you need to have a higher power or a different power, in other words, something outside to fix, or the keich gufe, tut sich durch dem, was man is megal, dem atzmi von dem keich. Or, that the keich gufe tut sich durch, that the power itself happens through, that you reveal within the atzmi in the power itself. This is such, I'm telling you, I have to develop it, so this is an unbelievable new psychological approach. Tremendous. Not just about sexuality. Right. It's about two types of healing. One is a healing from like that, and one is a healing from...
And it's simply the approach towards the youth today.
Yeah. This is tremendous stuff.
What do you talk about today?
The what?
Different shittas, the different approaches. How could you...
Like what time? What do you mean? Where do you speak?
Yeah. He said that one is I'm Chassidus steht mit Heche. You attack the core, so mainly you don't have all these issues. And others, they treat the symptoms. This is the market.
So now he's going to explain. That's why the tikkun of this type of begam, this blemish, is for primis hatera. Because you need atzmi. You can't. So what's the word? Because through the outer dimension of Teira, can sein as a learning Teira. You could learn Teira. Was based on learning is attacking it shaykh sodin yanim. While he's learning, he's learning, so he's not shaykh. Yemet learning to taka. He's actually learning then. Warum meint nicht as a learning Teira wie azeh in sichli wie andere muskolos. He's still talking Chassidus Torah. We're not talking about someone that learns Torah just like he's learning other seichel, other academic topics. Like astronomy or medicine. No. There, even while he's learning, he can be doing the worst possible things. It's an interesting take here. No, here we're talking about he's learning Chassidus Torah, Nigla, and he's talking learning. Es lost him learning, and that's Yitzhahara lost him echlearning. He's cooperating. U'makol mokum is kantikan of them inyanit faran, and nevertheless that does not give you a repair. It just basically it's holding the enemy at bay. So at that moment you'll talk, because you're busy, your mind is elsewhere, so you're not focusing on inappropriate thoughts.
We're talking about preventive medicine.
Exactly. We're talking at the core. This is just, that's what I'm saying. Chassidus Torah simply is doing is like keeping you distracted. Yeah. Anyway, but nobody said, it's like, it's made it. I just heard from somebody a Taich on Chochmas Chassidus, which I really liked. Not Chochmas Chassidus means outer Chochma, means Chochma that misses the point. That's what Chachma Chassidus. So Chachma Pnimius is a Chachma that relates to the point, which is the God within it. The deeper Chachma Chassidus means any Chachma that you learn, that you're missing the point. If you see the godliness in medicine, or you see the godliness in science, then it has then it's understanding how God created the world. Anyway, interesting. So Chachma Chassidus is a Chachma misses the point.
You could learn it if you understand the godliness with that.
Yeah, as it says, anyway. So this Chassidus is not based on learning. I lost him learning. U'makomak is kantikan of them in yon fran. Nor durich primis hatera, only through primis hatera. Vodos is a atzmi. Primis hatera is a core energy. Through this comes the tikkun. Vodos is doch von der einzigen kinyonim was Chassidus darf mesaken sein. This is from the very few things that Chassidus has to repair. I guess what he means is that this is from the few things that you need Chassidus to repair. Or, not sure how this means. Okay. Unazmen is das nit mesaken. And if you don't repair it, that nit verstehen Chassidus. If you don't repair this, because it's an attack on the shlemus, on the atzmi. He says, Shilach yodav b'shleimu. Oh, that's why Omar al-Pasuk. When they were singing Padav Shalom Nafshi, so the Rebbe Rashab started an explanation on this part of the pasuk. Very nice. Okay. But why? Because your atzmi has been defiled. Because the ikar tikkun of the minyan is dafke durach der atzmi. The primary tikkun, repair of this pagam, this blemish, is specific to the Atzmi. They said, Nidurach tshuva, not through tshuva, because we said tshuva before is a power from outside. Tshuva helps the faults. Tshuva helps all for everything. Not as the tikkun is durach the Atzmi alein, as the Atzmi alein to durach. But when the repair comes from the Atzmi, from the thing itself, from the core itself, the core itself, to durach means works it through. Is franin demayisin has an advantage. Mervi de gili Atzmi shel de akdomis hatshuva. More than and higher than the revelation of the core that comes through the preparation of tshuva. Vayisin hu b'shnei dvarim. And this advantage that comes from the core is in two things. V'do is mer, eir umer pnimi. That there's more energy and it's more internalized. Mer hergish pnimi. More internal feeling. So in other words, he's saying it's even higher than tshuva, learning Chassidus. We're talking about sexuality and Chassidus. That's what the Rebbe Rashab is talking about. He says that any type of blemish, any problem can be fixed from outside, but when there's something this is very relevant to your work. When it comes from something that affects the core of somebody, like Pagam Habris, sexual problems, or anything that attacks the core, you cannot just bring a force from outside. You need the core itself to be transformed, and only Chassidus can do that. So it can keep you distracted. But Pnimis HaTeira heals the person at the core. Yeah. Wow. Very interesting. Because you don't need Chassidus, you don't need a powerful medicine to get rid of a headache. Chassidus is what you need for this thing. I think that the lashon means you could teach means it doesn't. You could teach it two ways. I'm a daf mesakin zayin, because without that you can't understand Chassidus. But also, Chassidus, you need only Chassidus can be mesakin. You can read it several ways, but yeah. But the lashon is that's when the Einzig Inyan was.
It's interesting. On the one hand, Chassidus has to be mesakin it, but if you're not mesakin it, then you can't understand Chassidus.
Because that's fine, because it's because you're telling here it's a war over your soul here. It's not a war over your outside. It's not like what garments you're going to wear and whether your external behavior. You're talking here about who's your core being. Who does your soul belong to? Your sexuality or to God, basically? That's where the battle is.
So you start learning Chassidus without understanding. You're saying Chassidus is mesakin it, and if you're not mesakin, you don't understand Chassidus. When you start Chassidus,
it's not catch-22. Why? Obviously, it's your choice.
No,
when a person learns Chassidus properly, you're going to correct it.
How you learn Chassidus properly if you have
a that's the catch-22.
You tell me.
That means that unless you finish Ein base and really understand it, you will not understand the simplest whatever.
If you read this literally, it means that Chassidus is there at your disposal to fight this deep klipa.
Okay.
And if you don't fight it, if you're not going to correct it, you're not going to understand Chassidus. So in other words, it's not just but you have the power to fight it. That's what he says here clearly. You have the power to bring Chassidus in. The obvious answer is very simple. You begin learning to. It doesn't say you don't understand it all. You begin learning Chassidus. It's like a medicine. You start feeding inside of you, and this begins to challenge. And as you go more, it gives you the power to be mesakin it. If you don't know Chassidus, forget about this. This clip is not going to be conquered. Bottom line. You can learn nigla all day. It's not going to help you.
Is it like a sound bite for yeshivas to have an issue?
We also have an issue because we don't learn Chassidus either. That's why, because we're not learning Chassidus. Listen, there's not a question about this. I can tell you personally, testify to this. People who were seriously abused on this level, which is very damaging. We're not talking about Pkama Bris once in their lifetime. We're talking about someone who's been violated, raped, if you want to put it strongly, as a child by parents. I'm talking about very, very serious stuff that you can't even imagine. The sickest stuff, which completely screws up a person in the deepest possible way. Imagine a child, even little things that happen to a child affect. I'm still haunted by a guy in camp who told me that if I don't behave, because I don't know, I throw a stone at him or something, he's going to make me come with pajamas to dinner. He didn't mean it, but he said it to me. Children get terrified. I already went over to him and gave him a few pets to get it out of my system. But things like that, like some idiot adult scares a child. Children are very, you become terrified. You don't think. I told you the story with my wife when she was a little girl. First day she went to school. So the teacher's daughter beat her up. So you don't talk about these things because we don't understand children. Children don't talk. They're not like just tell us what happened. It doesn't work that way. They have different mentality. They're afraid. They have different fears. Very pure. So I can tell you people like that. What's the healing for people like this? I did a lot of research on this because as I realized how prevalent it is. Unfortunately, prevalent here too. These are the things nobody talks about. These are the worst. We're not talking about cholavakum now, and whether you're wearing a short skirt. And that's why when you see these things, you realize, you see, like for example, you see a Holocaust of 6 million people, you don't start talking about, like they say, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Some people are talking, have rearranging the deck chairs while the Titanic is going down, who's going to sit in Mizrach. You get the idea. It's a gnarishkeit. The house is burning down, and someone's saying, "Well, who's closing the window? Who's getting aliyah?" So when you know the real, when you see these things, you open your eyes. And trust me, I was once a naive little boy and did not understand these things. Things I saw and heard. First, I didn't believe it. Then I realized, and I started also appreciating the halachas in Torah. Taras mishpacha doesn't just mean mikveh. Taras mishpacha means kipshute, a pure home. A home where children grow up in a pure environment. And parents are absolutely responsible for that environment. That's their domain that God gave them to protect the garden. In every possible way. And this goes, by the Rebbe when he's, talked about television. He was bringing in, he said, the church. You're bringing in the clipper in your house. Because it doesn't mean that's the sin. You just create a house has to be a pure environment because children are pure. And the purer the environment, the healthier they'll be as adults, the more secure they'll be. I'm not even talking now, frumkeit now. I'm talking about health. Tada maybe the kedusha. I'm not even talking about frumkeit. That's the big clipper here. That frumkeit is more important than health. People are not healthy and they're frum, which to me is like as sick as it gets. Because they think frumkeit is going to solve the problem. It's a gloss. It's a drug. In that case, an unhealthy person that's religious is far worse than an unhealthy person that's not religious. I could say that right outright because he has a crutch. That's changer that like a guy told me. The guy came to me. Had shalom bayis problems. The wife was ready to divorce him. So I asked him, so what are you doing? He says, my mashpiyim told me I should learn more. So he goes he comes home, after dinner he goes back to 770 to what? To sit around with older guys and do what? I said, what are you doing? I understand. Your mashpiyim told you should leave your house? That's going to help shalom bayis? I said, you should be at home. What are you doing here at 11 o'clock at night in 770? But that's what they told him, that he'll learn more Tue Jul, Chassidus. Phone in my pocket. 1 second. So he was running away from his problems. That's what it was. You understand? And running away from your problems is not going to solve your problems. But mark that because I see this turn red. I don't want this to go out. Check if the green goes down. So I know I'm saying this because mamish negate to what we're learning here. And so what was I saying? So I've seen this. The only way it really heals is mamish what it says here. That's why I'm very blown away with this. I never saw it quite so literal. No, we always knew these ideas, but he's like spelling it out. 2 types of like medication, so to speak. The people who heal from that, they don't heal. They never goes away. It's like the Holocaust. A person who went through a Holocaust is not going to forget what happened there. And he's going to lose nights. And he's going to have nightmares forever. The guilt and family lost. You never forget these things. But what gives a person strength is when you go even deeper. Like a lot of Holocaust survivors will tell you, what gave them is not they forget, that they felt their revenge, the passion to justify, in other words, my brothers are not here, my sister, I'm the only one that survived, I must continue the family. I want names for those people that passed away. I want to give them so what they're doing is they're going in the same place where the grief is, they're building something. They're not just glossing over and sitting down and distracting themselves. And the same thing is with all victims of sexual abuse or serious abuse that goes into the kishka thing, like he says here in the core, the shlemus, is all, they heal always at the core. It's always in that level. they need to find something that's very soulful, very neshamadik. And the truth is that not everybody knows of Chassidus, but Chassidus does it because it goes there. It speaks about your core soul. So not just it speaks about it, you can relate to it. So I know people who started learning Chassidus, it mamish helped them tremendously in this regard. Because it was the only thing that can go in the same place and heal it. Like I said, important. Look, the Rebbe says in explaining this, the place that the Rebbe says interestingly, he says, "She's gala kol keich hasechel shalei b'limudei, v'chein ezol fanemen kol keich hasechel shalei." So, frankly, the more you're immersed, because you're going. Yeah. No, remember I said the Gemara says, "En kishel l'das." That means that you have to be mizbein, you have to have some das. Sexuality is always consumes you. It's never just like, you can't do it kalachayad, basically. It's not like someone, you can be on the phone and then you press a button. It doesn't work that way. You have to be focused and concentrate. Because it's das. It says in Tanya, das is Miloshn, it's kashrus. It's not Chochem Bina. That's why Chet Eitz Das, it's das. Which means it's what do you say, Yitoker Machshavte, right? It's immersion in it. So immersion in Chassidus, that's the key is the immersion. It's not what you learn, it's the immersion. You have to kochzach in it to the point where you're really trying to understand Ruchnius. Like exactly what we talked about here many times. We talk about, Chassidus essentially in one line is trying to realign a Magushim Dika mind to think like a Ruchnius Dika person. And that's a big work. For a person who's suffering on this level, that's a lifesaver. For other people, it's obviously a great way to go to climb. But someone because the person, he can't, when you're a Magushim Dika person, you can get away with it. You can survive. But if you've been hurt and violated, you can't continue living a Magushim Dika life. You have to become a Ruchnius Dika person. It's the only solution. I mean, that's the bottom line. They have no choice. You talk to anyone that was suffering that level, will tell you, I have no choice. I must find my soul because my body has been damaged. So the only thing is soul. The only real solution is soul. And Chassidus is soul.
He's talking about something else.
If you go to the let me ask you something. You ever see a human being that can think about nothing?
No, I didn't say that.
No, when the Rebbe says that, yes, it says the second half. There's no such thing as Hesach HaDas without filling the das with something.
That's what
So,
we're not talking about it. We're talking about
anyway,
level.
That's the bottom line. So you'll always see the people that are what suffered most. It's the soul that saves them. It always comes. Look, the first step in the 12-step program, which is but not even sexual abuse. You're talking there about alcohol and drugs and so on. You know the first 12 steps of the 12-step program is basically the first of the 10 commandments. It says like this: that I surrender my life to a higher power because I realize I have no control over my life. Only one that can say that is someone who's hit rock bottom. And it's the first thing that all healing begins from that. If you don't accept that, you continue to be when a person can't say that or feel that, they don't have that bittul, then they continue the problem because they think they can survive. I don't need anything else. I have it all worked out. The worst thing of all addicts is a functional addict. You ever hear the expression? A functional addict is a person who's completely addicted but can go to work and play the game as if everything is fine. Those are the worst of all addicts. Because they convince themselves everything is all right. Nothing is all right. Behind the scenes, it's horrible. They're stealing money. They're obsessed. They go do things that no one will ever imagine. But they're functional. They can come to the job. They know how to manage it. Because they don't come to that bittul. Then the people who come and realize. That's called, they come to realize that I cannot, my body and all my bodily desires destroy me. The only thing that works is my soul. Basically, that's the statement. I mean, I'm just giving you equivalent to... Now, Primish Atera, nobody's ever made a promise that if you learn this, it will wash out your soul. Chassidus does that.
The body has been damaged, not your soul. I would say that the soul has been damaged.
The soul is never really damaged. It's the awareness of the soul that's damaged. The soul is never damaged.
That trauma and all that, where is that? That's in the soul, isn't it?
Well, the way it works is like this. The deepest levels of the soul for sure are not damaged. What happens is...
Even through affairs?
Even through affairs, for sure not. The chida is never. Think of it like this. The heart could be healthy, but the arteries that bring the blood to the heart can become clogged. The same thing is the same thing. The soul, at its core level, what happens is when there's damage done, the soul goes back into its shell. The damage is being done. I don't mean, when I say body, I don't just mean body like the outer layer of the skin. I mean also the part of your awareness, your consciousness. But now your consciousness is all on it's an outer level. You have no access to your inner soul. You don't even know you have it. You don't even have the confidence in it. So it's basically, think of it, it's like the appliance is damaged and the energy that's right there in that appliance. It's not the soul in its core place. What you do is you try to you want to go into the deeper parts of the soul that were not damaged. I'll just give you an example, okay, so you'll understand. This you probably never heard before, but there's a thing called, I call it like psychological hypothermia. You know what hypothermia is?
Yeah.
When a child...
when you're in the cold.
Like it happens often with children.
Cold water or whatever.
They fall into under ice. So the body goes into almost a death state.
Shock.
Now, they used to think it was death. There were people actually, how they discover this thing? Because no vital organs are functioning. The heart is not beating. The brain is not functioning. You think the person is dead. All the signs seem like they're dead. And then they discovered there was a person they were about to bury around like 80 years ago. And they realized, someone said, I just saw a movement. They came to realize that when the body is in danger, what it does is it sends all its energy to the main resources. That's why we go into shock. That's why body goes into... It's actually a preservation method, survival method. The body will go to the heart and to the brain to keep it alive. And everything else can go. Because all it cares about is keeping the person alive. When the shock is so deep, like this type of case, it happens to children more because their temperature, they don't have the body, they don't have a big body. So what happens is the body will go into complete shutdown mode, but there is something there. So now they know it.
I can sleep.
Yeah, in order to be able to revive. So it basically goes to protect itself. It's like if you were attacked, the first thing you'll do is cover the most important part of yourself, God forbid, because the other parts are not as vital to life. So psychologically, there's a concept that's called an out-of-body experience. You ever hear about this? Psychologically, when a person is very seriously hurt, abused, I don't want to use examples, but especially if it's from a parent or from a loved one or close one, the child cannot tolerate the fact that someone, like a parent, is hurting the child. So the child will, they call disconnect. It's like not happening to me. And literally two people, like mamish, like the child can later talk about, like it happened to someone else, and you never know what's happened to this child. So disconnect, because God, in His mysterious ways, is not, because the child cannot live with the fact that someone's doing that. So the child will completely block out the memory, as if it happened to someone else. It's almost like you did it to my body, not to me, type of thing. This is proven phenomenon. This is not Baba Mises. And what happens is, if it's a one-time thing, it's a one-time thing. But if it's ongoing, at a point the child actually has two personalities. The personality that's being hurt, and there's another personality that goes undercover, and sometimes never will come out again. In good therapy, when they really work hard at this, they want to reconnect the two. Like they say, you're no longer in danger, so now you can come back out. But the child already has gotten used to living a different life. Instead, so they're almost like two different people. And this is a phenomenon, and you see it, and you can see people like that have very difficult relationships, because the people that are close to them see two people here. Here is this person, and there's this person. What's going on here? And you think there's something mentally disturbed with them. It's not necessarily the case. It was this, and they have to be taught you're no longer in danger. But the body has already become. It's like almost like if I punch you, God forbid, enough times. Every time I just do this, your body's going to right away tighten up just by a knee-jerk reaction, because it's learned that if someone stretches out their hand, they're probably going to punch you. I've had situations where a couple, because I know the symptoms today, will tell you that the husband will say, I just want to reach out to my wife, and she like that. It's the first sign. Why? Why would she do that? Because she's had that experience, and then she may not even remember it. It's like it becomes embedded. So what you want to do, why am I saying this? Because what's happening here is like, in a way, it's a blessing. Because God didn't let the pure part of the child really be hurt. It lets the soul, so to speak, remove itself from the situation. But then the body carries all the memories, and the question is, how do you reconnect the two? So in a way, the soul was almost like, that's what I'm saying, hypothermia. It's like, everything goes away in order to... Now the problem is if a person doesn't come back, so they live a life that's very, very disconnected, very, very disjointed, and they're I can go on and on. There's a lot to say about it, but to go back to this topic here, what I've seen myself is when you teach someone Chassidus, and it's far deeper than just learning Haskalah. There's something that speaks to their soul. It starts speaking to their soul. Once it starts speaking there, it gives them the power to reconnect to that place. Because that's where the damage was. And only something that can speak to that place can do it. Now, there are excellent therapists who know how to go there, because most of them are themselves, they call survivors. So they know how to speak about it because they were there. You know. Yeah, it's a tremendous, it's as painful as it gets. There's nothing worse than this. It's a personal Holocaust. But the lessons of the soul that are learned through this type of pain, you have nowhere. That's why I know, I can tell you people who talk about knowing Chassidus in their gut. I can show you people, completely secular people. Their knowledge of Chassidus is far greater than we'll ever have, all of us. Because we learn it, and they're living it. And I don't just mean Aveda, it's far even deeper than Aveda. We're not talking about just sitting and davening. Their kishkis are being changed by it, because it's the only thing that they have. It's the place that nourishes them. That's what it comes down to.
This is all
Sexual abuse basically takes away the oxygen of a person's core soul. Chassidus replaces that oxygen. Nothing else can do that, to put it in blunt terms.
Yeah, but we are talking basically about Shifra Zerul of Torah. There's beide wegen, du hast gebracht als ein Dogma.
No, but nein. But I sag Begam HaBris, one second. First of all, I sag Begam HaBris, and danach sag Shilach Yodev B'Shleimov. It could be a lot of things here. Hold on. The concept is the same, because it's talking about, it's an attack on the Shleimus Adam. And also, I'm making it relevant today. You know, listen, I'm talking about this is...
The hands of the mental cells does live behind.
Yeah, no, it's violating. Look. I agree. He's talking obviously, but the theory is absolutely the same. Look, sexuality is sexuality, no matter how you twist it. Whether it's shazal or the andere Sachen, it's a person's obsessions with sexuality. Yeah. However you twist it and turn it. Yeah. And if a person is having an affair or is going to prostitutes, it's a different form of obsession. But it's the same. You're going into the core. Obviously, I'm talking about it much more in a healing way. For Bochrim or for people who deal with the issue of Begam HaBris, there's plenty to say about it as well. But I think for me it goes a lot further when you're talking the healing. That's all. Yeah, absolutely. What I said now is definitely beyond but it's completely based on this.
So I just want to continue.
I will continue. Okay. So the last two things he said, you came an interesting day. We usually don't do this. We were doing Torah Shalom, not Ayin Beis from Yutas Kislev, huh? But it's heavy duty stuff.
Tough product. Obviously, now I can share the knowledge.
For sure. So he's saying, so this tikkun that comes through this is tshuva helft afalz. But the tikkun was kum from the atzmi alein to durach, he says, is more and in two things. It's a mer eir or mer pnimi. It's more eir, more power, and more internalized. Good. B'chazorah, now he's adding that by chazorah, this is what the Rebbe Rashab added. When they chazed this sicha,
and what's Teres Nigla? It's not that's me. What is it?
Teres Nigla, like he said, it's Chitzenius HaTeira. You're learning about a kurkevin. You know what a kurkevin is? A pupik. Or you're learning about Machlif Parah B'Chameir. You're learning about Elam Hazeh, but you're learning it what the Teira says to do. So, like he says, while you're learning, those in Yonim, Yetzer Hara won't bother you. Because you're learning. But it does not, tikkun for sure it's not, because it doesn't go there. It doesn't talk about the soul. It doesn't talk about these matters. Yeah, very often. They would chazer in front of him, and he would listen, and then he would comment. There's quite a few times you'll see it. B'chazara Omer al Zeh ha'inyan hezber. Omer al Zah Inyan Hezbollah. By Chazorah, the Rebbe Rashab said on this explanation. Tshuva Tata tzarich liyas mitchila. He's saying Tshuva Tata, the lower Tshuva, which needs to be in the beginning. He may be answering what you're saying. You need Tshuva Tata to begin learning. You need to have some type of regret, so to speak. Tshuva Tata usually means cleaning out the dirt type of Tshuva. Not Tshuva Ilah. Tshuva Ilah is more of a Gilei Alakus. Yeah, Charot Ovar. You know, like before you bring in the new furniture, you got to get rid of the dust. The below that any Keli Eratera, because without that he's not a Keli Eratera. But need dust the tikkun from them. That's the word. So you need a tshuva, because if not, you're not going to be coming to the game. You're not going to show up. So you need to know, if a person is immersed in their Vedas, they're not going to learn Chassidus, b'chlal. So, in a real way. So you need to have, the first thing is you need to be a keli. But that doesn't make the tikkun. But nid does the tikkun from them. This does not repair the problem, the gam habris. The tikkun is durch ha'er atzmi. The repair is through a core energy. Durch teira, through teira. Ve'ikar alidei primis ha-teira. So he doesn't say teira not at all. Because teira at the end of the day is still, but specifically, alidei zeh nasa tikkun sheyesh b'zeh yisr and maila. And this is the yisr and maila. That's what he's adding now. Because before he said that tshuva doesn't quite do it. Tshuva is like a force from outside. So he's explaining now. Because the tikkun has to come, and that's the advantage. As the tikkun is von inyanim von tshuva k'moi tanesim v'segufim, this has an advantage. Because when the tikkun, the prepare comes through outside, through tshuva, like fasting and self-affliction was the word, self-flagellation, tzigufim, punishing yourself, ukahai gavna, shayisin hu was in a hechere madrege, und dois faran mer gilier. So the tikkun yisra malavi is the tikkun is from inyanim from tshuva. It has an advantage. Here the tikkun is coming from a higher level. There's more gilier. It's not just you're fasting and breaking it down. Omer pnimi, and more internal.
And here he doesn't differentiate between Shuva Tato and Shuva Eloah?
He just doesn't say Shuva Eloah. It looks like to me the learning Chassidus is Shuva Eloah. Yeah. Vorum, as the tikkun is idei in Yoni Shuva, he's going to explain. Because when the tikkun is through Shuva, is not them in the Yaakov Holchel Darke. That's a nice expression here. Not them in the gates back to your regular path. Kenner echt zu kommen zu Madreges. So yes, when it's the tikkun through Yoni Tshuva, and afterwards when he goes back to his ways, he can still come to some level, meaning some level of control. But that's his nidas. But it's not real transformation. Es ken sein a Metzias, as a Zevim and Zok mit Peltz in Gan Eden. It could be a Metzias, that it could be a Peltz in Gan Eden. Ken sein as sich weggeben zu Teire, ken sein der Tikkun, Gosheleh de Tshuva Tato Gamken. So he's saying like this. It
has to be something through Torah, because before Chassidus was this gala, what do they do? It has to be also, you could be able to access to Torah also, but okay.
He said through Torah, before Primus HaTorah.
Yeah. No, but before Primus HaTorah.
Now he's saying something new now. A Peltz in Gan Eden means, I guess, you could have two opposites at once. You could be in Gan Eden, but without Peltz. In other words, or maybe it means a Peltz can sein as Avegem to Torah, can sein the Tikkun. In other words, a person could be dedicated to Torah, and he can. I'm not sure. That's what I'm thinking. One second. Can sein the Tikkun Gosheleh de Tshuva Tato Gamkin. The truth is, you could have a Tikkun Habgam even without Tshuva Tato. A person throws himself into Torah. Tzaddik and Peltz, you think, wie man sagt, mit dem Peltz in Gan Eden.
I think he's going to spell it out.
No, he doesn't spell it out. No, Yemel ved the Ruchnius sein grob. But then the Ruchnius will also be grob. In other words, he's saying like this. He's qualifying by Chazari, he qualified this whole thing. First he said that the Tshuva Tato you need to have because you need to be a Keli. But that doesn't make the Tikkun. At the end of the day, the Tshuva does not make the Tikkun. Because it doesn't go, for number one, into the core, into the Pnimi, and it doesn't really have that Gili that's what he says. It's not a revelation, it's not that internalized. It's more of a force from outside.
a
cheap way out, or it's like self-control, or it's pushing it off, or like I said, distraction.
Masking it.
It's not transformation. So you could also come, he says, to a level. As even in Zok in Pelzen Gan Eden, can sein, as also give him a second. In Pelzen Gan Eden. Grobe Ruchnis, that's what it means. He's in Gan Eden Tak, he's learning, but he's weißt doch. He's with a grobe pelz, he's with a big fur coat. Yeah. So you can sein that Tikkun God, and he says noch mehr. God shlo yadei tshuva tato gamkin, even without tshuva. He's just, like you can have a fagrepte misnagid who's learning Torah and is forcing himself. Now, the yamod v'de ruchni seich zayin grob. Avu makom mokom efshali is hatikin idea Torah. But nevertheless, there could be some repair through Torah. Shelo yadei hagdomas tshuva. Without tshuva. Now, bechlal is tshuva tato dav zayin. But in general, he's speaking several levels here on this thing. There's tshuva tato needs to be in general. But nidur das is that ikra tikkun. Okay, what he said is like this. You could have it through Torah without really tshuva tata. But generally you have to have Torah tshuva. But then it will never be. But not that makes the tikkun. To repair on that level, abnidur dem is the ikra tikkun. The ikra tikkun are the er atzmi. The main tikkun is through er atzmi, a core energy. That's what he added here now. Okay, it's basically several different elements to this. In other words, he's saying like this. Of course you can control it. Of course you can even keep it today. But it's not going to be a real transformation within. That's what he said. That can only come by going into the neshama and really having that er atzmi there. Oid Omar, the Rebbe Shabbat said another thing by Chazorah. As es ist schwer zu reden wegen dem Tikkun, was sei der Torah. It's difficult to speak about the Tikkun that comes through Torah allein. Shall der Agdom is Shuvah Torah. Weil it does darf sein mit a emes. Because that type of Torah has to come with a truth. When a dos is nicht emes, it's a sheker. And if it's not true, it's a false. She'ef shaliz b'zeh harbi inyanim from chitzenius. There could be a lot of external things. Now, bechlal is the inyan hazeh. But in general, this is how the Indian is. At kanu has hezber b'chazara. This is until here's what he explained by Chazara. What did he add here? Actually, I just realized something because it says yeah. I think he's qualifying a few things here. First of all, the need for tshuva. That doesn't do the thing at tikkun itself, even if you need it. Another thing, that Torah, even without primis Torah, that's what it looks like here. Yeah, like he said before. Remember before he also said, Milen Torah, b'shas ma'aseh. It's not like medicine. B'shas ma'aseh, you could hold it at bay. Oh, but he says, but a tikkun wird von dem nicht sein. He says before, U'mekom is can tikkun of them in Yanit Faran, column 1, middle of the page.
It seems like he's saying more than Hezbollah.
Yeah.
So in the Hezbollah he's saying more. You could be like a Pelzen Gan Eden. And he's saying that at the end of the day, it's hard to say how it is without. He's saying, qualifying. You can have it through Torah, but without Shuvah. But then it has to be very pure Torah. So someone to have it through Torah without Shuvah.
How about Shuvah and then Torah?
I'm not sure. I would lean towards. I think most likely, I would think he means Primis HaTorah. Because it means that through learning Chassidus without Shuvah, you could have this atzmi. That's what it looks like he's saying. Because before, but generally you still need to have some tshuva. That's what he's saying. I think there's also within here, I think there's a few things. They're a little overlapping. Yeah. There's also Torah without primis Torah, and there's tshuva without.
Because after he says Torah, he says Vikar Tikva De'er Atzmi. That's Chassidus.
Yeah. Because he's saying, no, b'chlal tshuva tatorah. Yeah. It looks like there's three possibilities here. There's a possibility through Torah and there's no tshuva. Chitzenis HaTorah. There's a possibility of tshuva without Torah, and then there's primis Torah is the ultimate.
How about the fourth, tshuva and then nigla?
That's what he's speaking about as well. Yeah, that also is not going to do the tikkun completely. It's bekitzer, it could be elaborated upon, but I think you have the basic principles here. Got it? I can't tell you whether he's speaking mamish about primis Torah or not. It sounds more like primis but you could also be saying tikkun al yedei Torah. Let's do one more sif, and I think that ends the inyan. Okay, here we go. The Chassidim welche sein gewend, listen to this one. This is pretty wild, I think. The Chassidim welche sein gewend, God potter von den Inyanim. Those that were completely free of these problems. Yeah. Zeich and Zeich can yisr in it. I see no advantage in that. Ze haben kein Chush in Chassidus nicht. Because this is what he said before. Remember he said Chassidus darf metaken sein? It means Chassidus, you have to be a sexual human being to have Chassidus. Ze zijn kein Chush in Chassidus. Ze haben kein Chush in Chassidus nicht. They have no Chush in Chassidus. He means basically Kalte Bruin was letting a non-nigla probably. The Chassidim that does, they call Chassidim. I don't know whether. Wegen Atzmi redt man nicht. We're not talking about Atzmi. He's not talking about Chassidim that are Atzmi. Aber a Chassid is dafke durch dem, was man is mesaken dem Minyan durch dem kann man verstehen Chassidus. Very similar to what he said here before. In other words, we're not talking about an Atzmi that's not shaykh to Inyanim, because then he has Chassidus. Yeah, mitzad Atzmi. But a person that are not shaykh, more mitzad. Yeah, guy that doesn't know how to be passionate. That's killer what he says. It's pretty risque here. Or the true cult. Because now it's very similar. Remember he said before, was das ist doch von der Inyanim was Chassidus darf mesaken sein? I think that's what he meant here also. It's not only that das von der Chassidus darf mesaken sein. You need to have this, because then you can understand Chassidus, and Chassidus is mesaken. That's what he says. Now look, he says, you need to have it, but not you have to be. Right. Aber a Chassidus darf durch dem was man is mesaken dem Minyan. Durch dem kann man verstehen Chassidus. Interesting. What means durch dem kann man verstehen? Durch dem because you had a taiva and you didn't follow it?
Or you follow it and then you can
No, you followed it and misakin, the tikkun part. No, God will forbid, not saying echte v'oshuv, for sure not.
No. Yeah.
Right.
You tapped into your passion for the holy purpose.
You struggled.
Durch dem kann man verstehen Chassidus. In other words, to understand Chassidus, appreciate it. Yeah, because then you're not dealing with chitzenis dikazachen. Yeah, like I said, not to eat cholavakum or to whatever, to brush your beard doesn't require this knowledge of Chassidus. Let's put it this way. Kol pol Hashem l'maneo. Oh wow, that means alles was the Eibishter macht is to live them. So it means even this taiva was made kol pol Hashem l'maneo.
Yeah.
That everything God did was in order for you to be a better person. So the fact that there's such a taiva, there's such a thing, is l'maneu. That's what he means here. That it's in order, the whole thing was in order to come verstehen Chassidus besser. By the way, it's not such a crazy word, because you come down Lamata and Elam Hazard, all the Nishanas of Elam Hazard B'chlal is in order to you to understand Ruchni better. Which you wouldn't really, if you weren't pressured.
This is a core thing. So
we're talking here obviously certain pagam, but the bottom line is, if you were not pressured in this world, you wouldn't really reach the depths of Ruchnius. Lamaila, they don't need any of this. But think about a neshama Lamaila. Doesn't have any taivus. Doesn't have any pagam habris. Doesn't have a potential. So what's their level of understanding Chassidus? They don't go there. They don't go to that core. I mean, we're not talking about an atzmi. We're talking about a neshama atzmi. Okay. That inyan from this takla, the yikara de malka, to look at the beauty, the yekir, of the king, kommt dafke durch dem tikkun von den Inyanim. It comes specifically to the repair of this stuff. Like he said before, to appreciate the beauty of the God, you have to appreciate. Yeah. Here, because those that were mesaken the Inyanim was some takim farochten das. By the way, mesaken doesn't mean that it had to be a pagam. Mesaken could be also that you didn't live up, that you didn't follow the taiva. Yeah. So those that were mesaken through a gili er atzmi, in other words, they learned Chassidus to go deeper to repair this. They're in a much they come to a far deeper appreciation of God.
It's only if they quit because of Chassidus.
Yeah.
Not if they quit on their own.
Right.
On their own, they
No way.
really quit. That's what he said. You can blind Matzadik in Pelt.
So there's no Yisin for Diva Samnish Kendach.
Your weakness is for
I don't know what that means. Misakin means. Misakin means the whole, the challenges. Wow. But das ist der von den einzigen Nummern, was gesagt auf Misakin sei.
You guys didn't want to learn this, huh?
Sholem Umenu. So now we go Sholem Umenu. They asked the Rebbe Rashab. Put this on. They asked the Rebbe Rashab. Im heim mu'ulim yeser. What does he mean? That's Achacher. Im heim mu'ulim yeser. Me'elu shetikra idei tshuva, or gam me'elu shehoye pturim legamri me'elin yonim. V'heshiv me'elu shehoye pturim legamri. That's, in other words, like we said in the beginning, those are completely not shaykh, that he doesn't think there are any advantage to them. So this, yeah. But those, no, he's not saying that it's higher. Before he said actually it was higher than those that do tshuva also.
So he says that Ayel Atzmi is lavdaf gehecher from those that are doing tshuva, shatik no liya tshuva. That's what he said.
No, he didn't say that.
That's what it's clear here now.
Meheim mu'ulim, who's hating those that are Ayel Atzmi.
But interesting, it says here, Oy gam me'elu. So if his answer was gam, gam me'elu. Understand?
Yeah.
It looks like both, actually.
No, he didn't say gam me'elu.
But the question was gam me'elu. Huh?
After gam is given the shaykh.
It seems like that. Okay, you can learn both ways.
Why does it mean?
They're for sure higher than those that did tshuva.
Those who fix it with this tikkun of Chassidus, are they higher than people who just did it through tshuva, or also people who didn't have a base, who don't have the challenge?
And what's the answer?
He said they're higher.
And what about the ones that higher than both? Is how you're learning. So, but Lavdavki, you could say he answered only from those. I'm not sure. I think it looks like from both. That's what it looks like. Because earlier he did say from both. Remember, he said Atzmi is higher than tshuva, because tshuva is an outside force. It could be he means here tshuva also those that were nichshel and they did tshuva
Without the Atzmi.
Yeah, let's see what he says here. For Omar Eida Pam, and then he said again, Kol Pol Hashem L'Maneyu. It's a very powerful word. That means every time you have a challenge, remember God made everything for you to have this challenge, not to overcome the challenge. That inyan lig b'mir alamol behelam. This inyan is always by me concealed. Und it's the zogir das was in them is frana seid komus. And now I say it. Now I articulate it. And there is a seid komus, a hidden secret. Was is negayet zum Verstand von der Minyan. Which is important. Which is negated. It's important to understand is v'lei uchel, and I cannot reveal it.
So the fact that I'm revealing it now has to do with some kind of a seid that the Rebbe Rashab does not want.
It looks like it's following the words called Paul Hashem Lamene. He's saying that inyan lig b'helam. This whole subject that he's talking about. I think the Kol Pal Hashem L'Maneh is basically saying, he's like telling the Bochrim, that when you have this challenge, remember, everything God is doing is now for you this challenge, and for you to overcome it, and go to Chassidus. I'm not sure, it looks like the flow is that Inyan Lig B'Mir Almo B'Helam, Verche Inyan, the ganze Inyan was at Geret Jetzt, the Kol Pal Hashem, the mystery of how God works. Then it's not clear here, what is the, okay, let's read what he says, it's it. Let's see the end here. In other words, chen is chachmas nistara. B'teich dvar of shal harayat shlita ala inyan. In the middle of the words, the rayat looks like the Frierdiker Rebbe asked on this inyan. Sha'omer sha'tikun al-yedei shleimus. He asked on this thing that he said the tikkun through shleimus. As the inyan from shleimus vesen got chsidim nidam al beis davon. The Rebbe Rashab is saying, "Amadav from shleimus chsidus." Chsidim vesen they don't even begin to understand al beis. So what the whole sikha? Yeah. So listen what he says. V'heshiv. The mais is nit azay. It's not correct. When eben vesen darf man wissen. In other words, what you're telling me they don't know the al beis, maybe b'poil they don't know, but they're capable of knowing it. You understand? So in other words, there's no such thing as this. And later he said, when he explained this, in generally doesn't mean if a grob eveg all these things. She'ena kavana b'mezid chaz v'shalom. He's not talking about p'gam abris b'mezid. V'chein gam b'shegig. Yesh chilukim. U'memeintin dem edelsten efen. So in other words, even the most the most edel way. Yeah. This is a pretty. Isn't this a pretty mind-blowing sikha?
Simon, are we closing? Because you're going to get a lot of emails now after this year.
Get at b'derech tznius. One second. Let me just see. What does he say in the next sifas in the Geya? Okay, we'll stop here. So we did this Tue Jul Yutes Kislev, pages 170. Well, the whole thing was started at 166, Tue Jul through 174, and now we did the last few pages. We did page 170 through 174. Yeah, you can stop it.